Okay, so we're discussing what happened in social media this week. This is Social Media Fridays, episode number 4. With us today we have Masataki Wasa, webmaster of wasaweb.net in the UK, and Masataki is also a Google top contributor on the AdSense forum and the Google Plus help community on Google Plus. Tony McCreath is a leading Australian SEO. He practices from Adelaide, and his company is Website Advantage. What's the URL, Tony?
Websiteadvantage.com.au.
That's my dog that made that noise.
He likes it.
Okay. All right. The first one for us to discuss today is the interesting result in the EU courts for where the court decided that search engines like Google had a responsibility to remove old data. We did actually discuss it a little bit last night on the Dumb SEO Questions Hangout. What do you guys think?
Guess I'll go first. I was corrected on that is social media next, because it seems social media is already giving us a bit of this sort of protection that I guess in that case we are, if we post, we own, whereas this is protection from Google where Google steals but we still own. I guess is the difference.
I think it was Tim Capper that said that the first 3 applications were a doctor wanting to get rid of complaints from old patients. Just I'll put the other 2 aside for a second, but I mean, will it be ultimately decided, or do you think it'll be ultimately decided that this is not such a great decision, given that it's probably in the public interest for the people to be able to find information? If a doctor hasn't practiced well in the past, you'd certainly want to know about it.
So it's like removal of reviews, the right to get reviews removed from your Google Plus page and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's sort of similar lines. In a sense, it's not. The issue is not really whether something's negative or not, but whether that piece of information ought to be available publicly in the first place or not. And that depends on different jurisdictions, what kind of laws people have, in terms of what kind of information gets, as it were, expunged, so that it doesn't affect people after a certain date and other such. So the application for this would be quite narrow, because it is impeding to right to freedom of expression, and the question is, how do you balance that with other rights that people have? I mean, in the European context. So it's going to be a balancing act, and I think it will have to, people have to make a strong case, and it has to be something quite specific. You can't just say, "Oh, someone said something mildly negative about me, I want that deleted." I don't think that's going to work. There will have to be a proper reason why that why that needs to be done. And I think initially there will be lots of people who complain or who will submit, saying, please remove this or that. But I think it's going to be very rare for this to apply, because it has to be something specific, and sometimes I think there needs to be a court order. It's not as though you can write to Google and Google takes it down. Well, I hope not.
Google already provides us ways of removing our personal data, don't they? From our account and our history. Which I guess, is that a different thing? It's not related to what this act's about?
I think, I haven't read this thing in any detail, so, I really I'm not the right person to comment on it too much. But it's not about information that Google holds as such, is it? It's basically there are things floating about in the internet. Google managed to find it and returned it, that information in results. The question is, should that information have been available in the first place?
Which I guess that's outside Google's realm, but if they use the data and the data disappears, then Google's the one that's promoting something that's gone.
Yeah, but I mean, you could argue that people should go after the sites that have this information that enable Google to come up with that result. But in terms of actual impact, it's going to be interesting. And there have been sort of different. I don't want to again muddle things, but to a certain extent, it's similar to previous court decisions. I'm pretty confident there have been judgments in Japan and in Germany regarding autosuggest, for example. You can't have something really specifically negative about a person when people start typing names in Google. And the autosuggest will come up with some alleged offenses that these people have committed, for example. So there have been sort of rulings like that. So I think in terms of that, and it will have. I think people will still have to go to court to prove that, on individual cases that the rights and principles apply to their cases.
Yeah, it reminds me of the review I did of a car sales company. And even though now my review does not mention the company at all, Google still remembers that. So it's only in Google's eyes that it's about this company now. Not that they'll sue me, hopefully. But I guess in that case I can say, well, I'm not talking about you anymore, it's Google, you've got to sue them.
Yeah, and it depends how the laws on libel are like in Australia.
Mm.
But I think it's okay. Sorry.
It just shows how complex this whole area is, and which probably means that it'll be anybody who wants to try and sue Google. They've got to get some professionals involved, and it's not a simple case for the average Joe to start doing this.
No, I mean that's a problem, isn't it? Because technology is way ahead of the law, and given the nature of the internet, it crosses borders, crosses so many jurisdictions. I don't think the law has yet caught up, and it's not going to catch up for a very long time.
It won't ever catch up, will it? I mean, that's just the nature of things.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be difficult for different platforms, because certain things you can say in certain countries, and other things would be illegal in certain countries. So I think we mentioned this before about in relation to Blogger, because they have specific country top level domains. So if you're looking at Blogger in the UK, it would end up with blogspot.co.uk. In Australia, it would end up in .com.au, right? So I think that it's per country takedown. But what do you do with something like Twitter or Facebook? They have a single .com domain, and you might be saying things which are actually illegal in certain countries, even though it may be legal in your own country. And I think it's going to be very difficult because each social media platform has its own rules, what it allows and what it doesn't allow. So it's not only whether something is illegal or not, whether your comments, what you write on those platforms, are in accordance with the policies that they have set up. And the social media platforms themselves often have to decide judgment, have to decide, exercise judgment as to what they would allow and what they won't allow.
Do a lot of these platforms kind of proactively try and resolve the issues before things like governments shut them down or people sue them? I guess YouTube's very quick at getting rid of videos.
Yeah, I think with YouTube, I suppose it's always the issue of rights, intellectual property, and it can be quite lucrative. So if you as a right holder are going to lose quite a lot of revenue because someone's uploaded a YouTube clip, then obviously you have a strong incentive to make sure that doesn't happen. It's more on the lines of, what kind of comments do you allow on Twitter? I think Twitter is pretty big in Britain, so they've come under scrutiny for things that people have tweeted. It could be in relation to court cases, for example, that they should mention. It could be libel. Excuse me. So, or bullying, harassing, things like that. That happens across different platforms. But how do you deal with that? What kind of tweets, what kind of Facebook posts, Google Plus posts are you going to allow? If it's seen as bullying and harassment, how far are you going to allow that to take place in your platform? And I think it's a very difficult one because there's very little I think you can do in terms of automation, because a lot of comments will be contextual. To be bullying and harassment in that circumstance, and on something individually might not be too serious, it may look innocuous, but taken as a whole, in a series of postings, tweets, it could mean something else.
Yeah, I've actually got someone I know who's working on an app as basically a way of tracking the conversational thread of bullying, because a single comment is probably not classed as bullying, but if you track the whole thread of things across multiple different social medias, you get the full story, and then you have a case to say, look, this is pretty obviously bullying, and whatever actions you're going to do from that onwards.
Yeah. So the overall thing, in a sense, is that are social media platforms going to be quite cautious? So are they going to be deleting quite a lot of things now because they don't want to get into the controversy, or gets getting sued, and so on and so forth? Or are they going to stand and say, well, we believe in freedom of speech, and we're not going to delete things unless and until there's a very strong grounds to do so?
Yeah, and they've got a big world to police there. I'd imagine that do social medias, there's ways to report bad posts, so there's a bit of a mechanism there already. If someone reports it, they will consider it and then remove it. So maybe that's the only way they can do it. It's interesting is with the Google Suggest you mentioned, and so I presume in the future that sort of problem is going to get more and more complex as Google is understanding what people say and what's being mentioned and interpreting stuff. Is that Google's response will be more uniquely Google and their own interpretation of things, and those things could be badly interpreted and could cause offence or say lies, and maybe Google's got to be very careful that they don't say things accidentally that are liable because they've interpreted from multiple sources.
Yeah, I mean, knowledge graph might be interesting in that respect.
Yeah.
In the future, because Google might return a result from knowledge graph as saying so and so is, and then
and they're not.
yeah, XXX, and that's not a particularly good thing. I mean that XX, so so and so is, and then something that's inaccurate, wrong, and libelous. I mean, then then that's a pretty risky thing to do, isn't it? Because they say, okay, yeah, we've sourced our information from various sites, and it's not merely a reproduction of that thing that appears on the site, which is currently the case with search results. They're not, they're not returning things interpreted in its own way. It is reproduction of what it sees on other sources. Now, if the knowledge graph develops in a way that says, so and so is aggregating all the information that it has, and it happens to be inaccurate, then Google's going to be in big trouble.
Do you think that it really is? See, I'm a fan of the knowledge graph. I know it's content that Google scrapes, but in this case, isn't it a scraping for good?
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of trying to point out that knowledge graph would be a different beast in the sense that there's some sort of editorial control transformation on part of Google. So it's more directly responsible, as it were, in what it states and shows, rather than merely quoting something else, as it were. So that's why I think, in terms of libel and putting out wrong information, it's much more serious, much more what would be the right word, right expression? Google is much more directly responsible for that content.
Yeah, so instead of them just repeating what someone else said, they are inventing.
Yeah.
They're originally stating something. So only time will tell.
Okay. Well, have we covered this EU ruling, or would you like to talk more on that?
No.
All right. Our next news item on the Social Media Fridays community on Google Plus is, oh goodness, I'm such an idiot. Tony, you produced or submitted an article recognising the world's top 40 social marketing talent, and suggested that we should get some of them to join us on our Hangout. I'm not sure that we need them. We'll set our own standards.
Oh, unfortunately, I didn't see any of us on there. So that's the target for next year.
Mm. Who were some of the people on it?
Actually, some of the top ones I did not recognise. Just open it up. Oh, it's one of those newspapers. I think I've used my daily allowance. I mean,
isn't that a pain? I really, if only they knew how much ill will they generate by doing these paywalls.
So the top guy is Gary Vaynerchuk. You ever heard of him?
No.
CEO of Vayner Media. And then Jeffrey Hazlett and Ekaterina Walter. And then we get Rand Fishkin.
Rand Fishkin, I know.
Yeah.
Or I should say, I know of.
Which, because I guess he's crossing over onto social selling. And then Dharmesh Shah, I know him. Jeff Bullis. So I guess the ones I know are the ones that are SEO. They wear a lot of hats. Seth Godin is in there.
Well, social selling works. I mean, I have to admit, I was a skeptic, and until you know, I've been lucky enough to witness it in action and seen the sales that it makes, and it's from my background, which is wholly and solely web-based affiliate marketing. It's just been an eye-opener for me how devastatingly effective it is, and so I guess, but I'm only talking of small businesses. I guess those same rules and the same game applies, and so in much larger businesses there must be guys that are leverage. I don't know that it could be as devastatingly effective as it is for small businesses, but there must be ways of doing it. I'll tell you who we should get on to talk with us one day soon is David Ameland.
Yeah, wouldn't argue with that.
He advises people like Johnson & Johnson and Procter and Gamble and so on larger corporations interfacing with social media. Oh, Tony was so impressed with what I said, Masataki, he's bolted.
Yeah. Just to give David a bit of a plug.
Oh, you've got it. Well, where's mine? Oh, no, actually, I know where mine is.
That's been around Australia with me.
Mm-hmm. What time is it in the UK at the moment? Oh no, I think David's in Greece now. I think I saw a note on Google Plus this morning.
Yeah, he was complaining about their tourism advertising.
What time would it be in Greece right now, Masataki?
Ooh, there'd be 2 hours ahead of me.
So they'd be about 9 o'clock.
If they're if they're 2 hours ahead, then it'd be 9:30 because it's 7:30 at the moment. But I better check. I have no idea what time it is. Which time zone Greece is in?
I'll see if he's on the list. So, Jim, what sort of social selling are you talking about that you think works? Are there certain tactics?
I'm thinking of like, well, I can't really. I can speak generally. So imagine say a lifestyle gym where their entire business is focused on Facebook. Their users go to that page to find out when events are on. They discuss the rates and subscriptions and so on. They discuss things that they might want to be doing. Friends bring more friends. This particular business I'm thinking of does nothing else but Facebook.
And
you go on.
But yeah, I think the strong side of it is people like to buy what their friends recommend. I think.
Yeah.
And so if you can get involved in that story.
So they've developed a community about 2,000 strong, which feeds their entire business. They run their entire business. Their entire marketing effort is Facebook.
Yeah, and I think there are many ways to use social media platforms. I think a fashion label, sort of a brand, uses Twitter to conduct flash sales in particular shops. So you have to be following the Twitter account, and they would suddenly come up with flash sales taking place in particular shops for X number of hours, or they're going to give you free goodies if you turn up at this particular shop in a time range, and that gets shared. That that even though people might not go, that kind of tweet gets shared a lot, and it's not just Twitter. It gets then shared on other platforms as well, and it does seem to generate a lot of footfall. So there are many ways to use social media platforms.
Yeah, I like that. It's got a psychological thing to encourage people to share, because if you're going to share something, you're doing it because you feel better for sharing it. So in this case, it's people sharing an opportunity. So they're doing a favor to their friends. So if you can get that sort of thing in your social media stuff, instead of what typically you see posts or stuff that are just there's nothing specific that says tell your friends about this, you'll look good.
Yeah, it's the idea that you are in group, as it were. So you give the air of exclusivity, and that I think is and that hooks people, because then it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. I don't want to miss the next one that's coming up. There's a huge incentive in that way for people to start following various different accounts, because they don't want to miss the next opportunity, because they might think, oh, I can't make it today, but if it happens sometime in the future, I might be able to make it.
Or if I can get a friend, if a friend can make it, then I've just done my friend a great favor.
Exactly. And that can be, all sorts of different offers. It might be some sort of advanced thing, example. So again, it's you are in the in crowd, and you're a member of a kind of an exclusive club, as it were, by just joining, following the particular social media channel. And there are various ways, I think, to use it to incentivize it without forcing people to share it, or making sharing or liking or whatnot a precondition of something, because then if you force people that way, it's not really going to go down that well, I think, in the long term. Whereas if you can incentivize sharing by sort of creating that atmosphere, that thing that, okay, I'm interested in this, so would my friend, and if you can build that up, I think that's a more sustainable way in the long term.
Yeah, and would you say share is the most valuable asset you've got on social media for your business? Like a +1, a like gets a bit, it's a bit of value, but a share is where you get your main value.
Yeah.
I'm having difficulty bringing that page up. Did you guys? Can you guys get that page to come up?
Which page?
The one we're actually talking about right now.
Yeah, I got it in the end. I had to click a few hoops.
Yeah. Okay. Sometimes I wonder if I'm losing my faculties.
I don't know how to stop the phone. Yeah. Another area on social selling, I guess, is I've got an example today. Was someone asked a high-up social media expert in Adelaide, what SEO would you recommend? And luckily, she recommended me. But my social selling was, apart from being recommendable, is that you need to be on those platforms to create that shareable link. So this happened to be on Twitter, and she had to contact me to ask me what my Twitter account was. But it shows that, I guess, even just having a basic presence on, say, Facebook means that people can refer to you. So it's always worth just being there, even if you're not doing much. Be there, provide the basic contact details, so that if someone wants to recommend you, you are there to be recommended.
Yeah, it makes sense to have some reactive account, as it were. So you don't have to be necessarily active in that platform, but people can contact you on that platform if the need arises.
Yeah, it's like just a business directory listing, but you want to be on all the major business directories, so get on there.
Yeah, and make sure to respond. The worst thing that can happen is that you create an account and then sort of forget about it, even though people may actually be using that to contact you, and it wouldn't end well if people think that you're ignoring them.
That leads on to a little note I made. The past few weeks, a new client I've had has got these accounts, but they were all created by a previous employee. So the problem is happening is that they don't have access to the accounts anymore, so they can't respond. And so my job has been to reclaim these accounts in one way or another. And we've eventually got hold of the email address of this employee that was shut down. But these sort of problems happen. people create accounts in their own, create social accounts in their own email, and then later on you've lost it.
Yeah, it's been a big problem with Google Plus Google Plus Pages. Because you need to have a Google Plus profile in order to create a brand page. And someone creates it, and then that person leaves the company, organization. And then a few months down the line, company or the organization wants to be active on Google Plus, and they say, oh yeah, we have this page, but we don't know who owns it or whose profile owns it. And there isn't really a way to claim it. You have to track down the person who owns that, or the person whose profile owns that page, and then ask for the ownership to be transferred. It's a bit different for local Google Plus pages, but for brand Google Plus pages, there have been lots of questions in various forums and communities asking, how do we regain access to our inverted commas page, but they don't actually own it, so it's been a problem.
And you don't want to lose these pages, especially like a Google Plus one, because it might have reviews on it and some value that you want to keep.
Yeah, local Google Plus pages there are ways to reclaim it, as it were, but for brand,
And all this time, these businesses are there, and they're not receiving the feed of updates and posts that are happening on their property because nobody's on the account. So, like you say, one of the worst impressions you can give is if people ask you questions and you ignore them.
Yeah. All right. I finally got that article open, and I recognise a couple of people from there. Gary, the one that's number one, I can see why he's number one. His history is that his father had a small wine business, and he revolutionised, starting in about 1999, he revolutionised his father's business into a very big business. I'm not sure of the company, but oh dear me. I'm not sure of the company, but yeah, he was. There was a conference in New York he spoke at recently. I think he must have been hyped up on some sort of substance, because he was talking a mile a minute, but fascinating guy to listen to, and really obviously knows his onions. And the other one I recommend, well, I'm not in a position to recommend, but the other one I saw there is a lovely guy, is Steve Rubel, who's now working for Edelman. Last time I heard, Steve Rubel was working in Switzerland, but I think he's now in the US or whatever. So I'll try and make contact with him and see if I can get him to come along and talk with us. I think you'd find that interesting. All right, have we covered this article?
Yep, thanks, so.
All right, so the next one is an article on the White House contribution to the Bring Back Our Girls hashtag campaign. This was where the young girls in dormitories from an educational institution in Nigeria were kidnapped and are being held to ransom by, is it Boko Haram? Is that what it is? I'm not sure. But yes, if those girls, let's be frank, if those girls were white girls, the world would have been outraged immediately. But it took a week or two to gain momentum, and basically I think it shamed people into understanding what was really going on here, and the intervention of the First Lady of the White House. Michelle Obama held up a sign which some cretins used Photoshop to bastardize and use against her. But anyway, it certainly it got the ball rolling, and then the US government, the UK government, I think also that the Spanish government have jumped in and offered help to try and find these girls. I was hoping you'd jump in and tell me whether it was Boko Haram, Masataki, or not.
Yeah, I think it's Boko Haram, but don't know how to pronounce it. But that's I think that's been a transcription. BOKOHARAM, isn't it? Boko Haram.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but could you just hold that book up, please, Tony? Because I just invited David Amerland, and I noticed a viewer's just popped on there, just in case that's David. He might come.
Yeah. You might recognise the book from a previous photo.
Yeah, sorry, Masataki, go on. We haven't had many viewers today, so when one appears, I thought I'd better strike while the iron was hot. A couple of times, this is the third time that viewers have popped on and popped off, so I thought I'd take my chance this time. Please go ahead. Sorry, Masataki, I interrupted you while you were speaking.
No, I actually finished. Talking about the Boko Haram name and how it's been spelled or transcribed into Latin alphabet.
Ah, right. So I actually planned that. Oh, good.
Yes, it was perfect timing.
Mm. It's a horrible thing that has happened. It seems to me that something like that happens, that the whole world should just stop. It's just not on. It's just not on. And why things? I mean, I've been reading a little about it, and apparently there's a ruling cabal in Nigeria that actually has tried to stop the protests in suggesting that the people are making the story up, that it didn't really happen. It seems incredibly corrupt. But, I guess from my armchair, there's not much. You just feel helpless, do you not?
Yeah, and there's always been a debate about the effectiveness of social media. I mean, people become aware of the issue, which is a good thing. Without perhaps without the social media campaign, fewer people would have been aware of the situation. So in that sense, it serves that purpose. But does it actually do anything? I mean, that's debatable. And you could say that it's an easy way for people to show their engagement. So what they'll just, they need to retweet things or post something, share something, and that's it. It's not as though you have to go out, stand outside the Nigerian embassy with a placard with lots of other people. That would require quite a lot of organization, and a commitment, time and effort. You actually have to go to a place, join the demonstration, contact people, make sure that it's taking place. Someone's going to bring the placard, someone's going to bring a megaphone or something like that. Someone's going to get an authorization from the authorities so that they can actually congregate outside the building, so on and so forth. No, it's click. That is not to say that people don't care. People do genuinely care, but in terms of how much effort do you need to make your opinion heard, it's much less, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even writing an email might be too much for many people. They might be enraged, but how many people are actually going to compose an email to, let's say, the leader of your country, saying, this is intolerable, that something needs to be done? Or even a physical letter. Because if you do, I have found out that if you do write physical letters, they tend to respond more.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's the manufacture and amplification of rage and anger, justifiably so. People are enraged and angry, but part of me thinks that it's all too easy. I mean, it's just that you get enraged, angered, properly and rightly so, but only for 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you forget about it. Then there's going to be something else that you're going to be interested in.
And I was just looking at it. It's all petered off now. I didn't even know if the girls have been found or not, and I'm still struggling to find out any news about it. So, yeah, it's 10 minutes of fame, and then everybody's forgotten about it and moved on. But I guess those one clicks of individuals who are saying, I associate myself with this plight, adds up to maybe someone like, say, in the White House becoming aware of it. So your individual little bits of effort could end up creating someone who actually can do something about it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's I mean, what would be interesting is when the history of the Arab Spring is written in the future. Because it has been claimed that, this is a social media revolution. People organized, communicated using Facebook and Twitter to basically bring down the regimes in various Middle Eastern countries. So it's a bit like hundreds of years ago, printing and the Reformation. It's similar argument has been made. So was the Arab Spring a social media revolution? It's going to be interesting because it might be, it might not be. It might be a factor. It might be an important factor. It might not be. It's hard to say.
And it depends who wins in the end, because they're the ones who write the story.
That's true. It'd be interesting what's going to happen now in Turkey after the mining disaster, because Turkey has Turkey has had issues with certain social media platforms. The current government is not particularly popular, and it has made, I mean, faux pas, I suppose, would be putting it lightly, following the disaster. And it's going to be interesting how social media fits into how the narrative is created, about the government's response.
Social media has done some good things, though. Like, think back to, I had to look onto Wikipedia to remember the story. I mean, that just shows. At the time, I was absolutely out of my tree over it. But Rush Limbaugh criticised a young law student, Sandra Fluke, who was called by Limbaugh a slut and a prostitute for, I think, simply just wanting contraception. And I'm sure you all remember that there was a huge campaign in the States to unseat Limbaugh and to boycott people who advertised on his show, which was very, very successful. But Limbaugh is still earning $400 million a year, so I don't know how successful. But oh no, I lied. It wasn't $400 million a year. It's $400 million until 2016. But you know, I wouldn't mind pocketing the change on that. Yes, but it's an interesting phenomenon, particularly for somebody like me who. An older person, social media. It's an interesting thing. You can get lost in it. It can become another reality. It certainly did for me when Google Plus first started. I don't think I got any sleep for the first 30 days. It was just such an amazing place to be. Like, you know, the contact and the interaction with people that you would never ever have imagined having the opportunity to converse with. It was just I couldn't believe it. And yet I tried to get my sons onto Google Plus, and they would never bar of it because. They viewed Google Plus as another social media platform like Facebook, and they felt it would be unprofessional to be here, or at least I was trying to get it as a means of communication, for business use, and they just wouldn't have a part of that. Anyway, I'm rambling. It must be time for a beer, is it, Tony McCreath?
You must have read my mind.
Grab me one.
I wonder what time it is for a beer. 4:29.
Mr. Taki, you're not included in this because it's only breakfast time over there.
No, I need my second cup of coffee. I think that's due. Still not completely awake.
Mm-hmm. All right. Will we move to the next?
Yeah.
I noticed that Andy Wigglesworth just contacted me. He's watching also, and he might join shortly. Also, Tim Capper, also in the UK. Has some family commitments, but we'll be joining us later. All right, Tony McCreath brought out an article from the Twitter blog on muting people. So that his comment was, so you can ignore people without them even knowing it. And I don't know whether I should blame Google or what, but I'm fairly sure that Masataki Wasa and Tim Capper are ignoring me. I I don't know. I'm working. Working on ways to figure it out.
I don't know if it's rolled out
Go
yet.
on, Tim. Go on, Tony.
I'm not sure if it's rolled out yet. I think it's just for iPhone and Android apps, and I don't really do Twitter on there. I ignore everybody by just not doing Twitter.
I don't know what's happened, but maybe I've been on Twitter for long enough, and I haven't been on there long, maybe 1 or 2 years. But all of a sudden, people have started circling me after remaining static for a long, long time. Each day a few more people join, which I dutifully fire back. And Twitter is becoming a little bit more interesting. But like the only time I post on, well, no, I think I've made a couple of direct posts on Twitter, but most of the posts I make are just reposts from Google Plus. I set it up in the Google Plus settings to propagate onto Twitter.
Is that a? How do you do that? Is it in Google Plus that can auto tweet?
Yeah, it's in the settings. I'll try and find it and give it to you.
I know you can link Facebook and Twitter to your Google account, can't you?
Yeah. I'm not sure that you can publish on Facebook though. But certainly you can with Twitter, but only the public posts. If you make a circle post, like a private share to however many people, that won't publish on Twitter. But every public post that I put on the Google Plus gets sent onto Twitter about 2 hours later.
Might do that. Probably because of this, I've kind of decided to go back on Twitter and get a bit more active again. And I've also done the experiment of changing my Twitter handle, which so far seems to have gone well. And like you, I've started gaining followers again. So, and I'm doing it under my own name, so instead of some random keyword-rich Twitter handle. So hopefully I'll get more active, and I think I might do that. I might get Google Plus to automate. I'm not generally keen on these automatic cross-posting stuff. Because often you want to do a slightly different message on the different platforms. And also I guess it would, people who follow you on multiple platforms will find you a bit annoying because they're saying the same thing all over the place. I'll have to think about that.
Are you on Twitter, Masataki?
Yeah, very sporadically. I have 3 accounts.
3 accounts?
Yeah, one, essentially one each for my sites, so my subdomains. So one in English, one in Japanese, and one sort of overall. It's the same with other social media platforms, as it were. So I have, for example, 2 Pinterest boards, one in English, one in Japanese. Facebook, again, I have my own personal profile there and 2 Facebook pages. And same with Google Plus. I have my Google Plus profile and 2 Google Plus pages. Really to see how it how it all works. Only started to create Facebook pages and things like that after I created Google Plus pages. Just really see how they compare. Twitter I've had for a very long time, but I've never been active on it. It's always been I post updates. If I upload something to my site, then I will make a tweet. But I never really got into the platform. Same with Facebook.
I've got 20 accounts, but I create accounts for clients.
Yeah.
That's becoming harder and harder to do, isn't it, Tony? With authentication and so on. It's one thing to do it for clients, but the platforms themselves, they'd rather you were that the clients themselves were doing it. Do you get that feeling?
I've never had trouble on Twitter. I don't think they really verify much there. Facebook, they tend to do. I get them to do it and then invite me as a manager. And on Google Plus, it's the old problem of your places. So you have to sort out what mess has already been made. If you can get that together, then get myself as a manager and then invite them as a manager. And eventually you can turn them back into the owner. It's all, yeah, you definitely need your client's interaction in a lot of cases to make sure they do the verification postcard or something like that. But Twitter, that's an easy one.
What do you use to manage 20 accounts?
Hootsuite.
Okay, yeah.
So it's actually, I don't know if it's as cheap as I got it, but it cost me about $6 a month for unlimited social media accounts.
Yeah, I think it's 3 for 5, isn't it? Something like that. I think it's 3 up to 5.
Yeah. So basically, if you're a single business, the free account would suit you. I don't think you can do Google Plus on the free one. That might have changed.
I mean, Google Plus page, but not profile. Yeah.
Yeah, which is you can't do profiles yet, anyhow, can you?
No. But yeah, I have a Hootsuite account, and actually 2 of them. Again, one in English, one in Japanese. So I have my Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus accounts there as well. And for Twitter, I use TweetDeck as well.
All right.
It's bought by Twitter, so it is. You can use your Twitter authentication. So it's quite convenient in that way.
I actually tend to not use Hootsuite that much, though. I've got a Chrome browser. Do they call them accounts? So I've got multiple browsers, basically, one for each client. And so I can open a browser that's already logged into their Twitter, Google Plus. Very quick for me to just open up a browser I can see their streams and tweet as the Twitter person rather than getting that little via Hootsuite thing in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
So I find that more. It's just the way my workflow works. And another popular one's Buffer, which I think is quite good for managing multiple accounts. So on the Twitter thing about the mute, do you think this may reduce the reach of businesses because they're the ones that are going to get muted the most?
Say that again.
With this muting thing on Twitter, do you think people who follow businesses maybe because they're told to, or but instead of unfollowing, they'll just mute them, so the business won't get realistic statistics about how many people are really listening to them, and so you could end up that you think you're doing great, you got 1,000 people following you, but they've all muted you, so they're not even seeing what you're doing.
That's the other side of the coin, isn't it? I mean, as well as the successes like people that can run a whole business on Facebook, there's also the other businesses which are just pouring money down the drain, getting likes and activity that just doesn't benefit them in dollar terms at all.
And it's so hard to measure it.
Yeah, Joel Cunningham was asking about that last night. And what came out of that conversation was that Google has canned wildfire. Excuse me a moment. That's not fair. All I did was cough. Yeah, they had this thing called wildfire, and they canned it. It was some sort of going to be some sort of a marketing thing for things like for Google Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you see my post last night that Zuckerberg is buying Google Plus as a birthday present? Did you see it?
Well, I was still in the Hangout last night, and I did the same as Tim. I was clicking on it for ages.
Actually, I must have a look to see how many views it's raised.
No legal emails?
Illegal emails? What do you mean?
I don't know, for suing you for libel or anything. 1,134 views, and so I thank you for at least 4 of those, Tony. Is that you're looking at a view count for a post?
Yeah, I've gone to this link. I'll show you.
Actually, with the that hashtag campaign, I was trying to find a website that would do trending for hashtags, and I couldn't find one. Do any of you remember? I'm sure there used to be one around.
I'm not sure what you mean, mate.
Basically, it'll show a number of retweets or number of tweets with a hashtag over time, so you can get a trend of how popular something is. So I was trying to find out the trend of bringing back our girls, if it was a gradual increase or if it just went crazy.
Oh, I think it'd be certain to have just gone crazy as soon as Michelle Obama jumped in. I can't get a link to that. I tell you, I'm becoming absolutely incompetent. I cannot get a link to that image.
What's for tea?
What's for tea?
I think I can hear cooking in the background.
No such luck yet, but I'm sure it'll happen soon. You're talking to me? Can you hear what's going on here? Yeah, but could you hear that? How? Oh dear. All right, let's move on from Twitter to the most interesting article we have to discuss today. And I was looking on the SEMrush blog and came across this article that was posted by Eric van Buskirk yesterday. It was about gaming Google+. I imagine you haven't had time to have a look at it, Masataki, but Tony and I were talking about it in the green room before we started here. And essentially, it's people still being able to get away with entries on Google Local, and this article was very interesting in that it did a financial breakdown of the cost of a keyword if you had to buy an AdWords ad. Say for argument's sake, affordable loans is about a $30 keyword. But anyway, Tony is probably best to describe to tell us what's going on.
I've got that example here. It was a business named Austin DWI Lawyer, and so a keyword-rich business name, not their actual business name, and so they got a spot in the search results, and if you advertised on that search result, it's $18.82 a click. So that's a good way of valuing it, and they actually came up with a formula that the cost to have that spot would have exceeded $421,000, and they got it by creating a fake business. Yeah, basically he's used the SEMrush data to pull out dubious business names. So he found money keywords, and then found businesses using those money keywords. And he just said the place is rife with all these dodgy business names, where you can, I can't remember exact examples, but maybe it's like multiple ones at the same address. Just all the different tricks to get your business on there. And yeah, very interesting, because he basically came up with dollar values for what they're doing.
Have you had time to scan the article, Masataki?
Yeah, I just skimmed the article.
Yeah. Any comments?
Well, I think local is plagued with these issues, and then until legitimate businesses actually verify their listings and use it and accrue reviews and things like that, there's going to be scope for abuse, because the threshold to create the creating fake listings seems to be quite low, and because Google Plus Local is not, the take-up rate for Google Plus Local isn't particularly high. A lot of local listings, lot of pages, they remain unverified, as it were. So I think once people actually create fake listings and start to use that, it actually might do reasonably well compared to other listings, because other listings are not particularly strong, if you see what I mean. If a lot of listings are verified and they have accrued reviews and they even might be using socially to interact, then it becomes very difficult for fake profiles to get through that, because there are established proper real businesses there that have accrued or built up that, if you like, a social capital, social media capital, or Google Plus capital, if you like. But that's not the case. It's still quite wide open. Take-up rate is low, so the threshold for people to get their fake profiles up there in the results, fake pages up there in the results, that might be too low at the moment.
Yeah, so the effort's not that much. You can get a page that'll rank with just waiting for the postcard as your major effort.
Yeah, and but at the same, but the rewards are quite large. I mean, when you think about it, because local, for queries that are deemed as local, the Google Plus page might be quite prominent in the results, in the local section. I don't think the page or the listing has to be verified, claimed by the owner, for it to appear in that section that you hover over, and then the knowledge graph appears for each individual listings in the sort of main search results. There's you might have an ad and then a couple of results, web results, and then you have local results, and you click on those, and then the knowledge graph appears to the right. So if you can do that, and that's quite a prominent exposure, as it were. So if you can get a listing in that results, that's quite a lot.
And actually, if you get the top spot and it's deemed a branded search, you'll get the knowledge graph instantly. So you get a very prominent control over the listing.
Yeah. So yeah, Google needs to do something about it, I think. But I think it really depends on the take-up rate, I think.
Yeah, definitely the case. If the competition was there, if you needed to be proactive on your page to start ranking, then it's just a lot of effort to do churn and burn business pages.
Yeah, so I think it really depends. It is really let's start again. It really depends on how many businesses actually claim and verify their listings, and making it tougher for these fake pages to get through and above the competition. But until that happens, which may not be for quite a long time yet, this tactic might be ineffective.
And they've actually taken what could be classed as a step backwards, where now you can actually include what your business does in your business name. And I've actually done that, so I'm following the guidelines. And my business name is now Website Advantage SEO Services, and it's well within the guidelines. And I went from not ranking on the maps to now I'm in the top 10 on the maps for SEO. So they're kind of gone backwards a bit, letting people keyword stuff in their business name legitimately now. So yeah, goalposts have slightly changed. Actually, interesting here. If you do a search on SEO, it's not deemed a local search. I know in England, is SEO localized at all, or?
I don't know. Let's see.
several years ago it seemed like they deliberately stopped doing local businesses for searches on SEO because it was so spammy.
There's no local section to the results, so it's all web results.
What if you add a local qualifier like SEO London?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. And then you get, then you do get the knowledge graph, and one particular site has done extremely well. But SEO is SEO London, but this is sponsors for educational opportunity.
So there you go. That's someone spamming the places they've called their business SEO services, London.
Yeah.
So that I think is against the guidelines because you're not meant to put your location in there unless it's
the offshore name, right?
And I think if you're multiple locations, I think you might be allowed to.
Oh, to disambiguate. Yeah.
But obviously their business isn't called SEO services. And there is one map entry in there. Yeah, in Adelaide there's no map results anymore. They kind of wiped them out for some reason. But I think now Google's allowing people to put keywords back in their business name. They're going to start getting a bit spammy again.
Oh dear. And extremely long Google Plus page names.
There are still guidelines. There's kind of you're allowed to. It's something like you're allowed to say what type of service you do as well in the heading. So we'll see how things go there. But I'm quite happy. I'm the first one to update it. So I've got a little bit of a boost by being first in.
So we've run out of things to talk about.
Is that the last one?
It is.
Foursquare have just released their Swarm application. So not major news. It's just they've split the application into two applications now. And from what I see, they're focusing a lot more on the idea of local friends to kind of, I think in the US, Foursquare has just been overloaded with people knowing too many people and too many people checking in and too many mayors. So they're kind of shrinking it down into groups. So you first see people who are nearby you in distance to try and cope with this overwhelming thing. If you become a mayor, you're only a mayor within your friends. I think they should have allowed to have a super mayor because I like my mayorship and I want to have the power that I had before. But now I'm only going to be a mayor within my small circle of friends, which makes it a little bit too easy when you're in a small town like Adelaide. But the app looks good.
Well, you've already got the Cooper's Pale Ale happening, Tony. You're making me thirsty.
Yeah. You must have been talking when I opened it.
Yep. Anything else on your list there?
No.
All right. Well, look, I think we should terminate the broadcast until next week. Do you think?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Thank you for keeping us company, and we'll be back at the same time next week. Thank you very much.